model, specifically saying that this is what we are going to do throughout our research project. This is our theoretical approach. So we looked at intersecting inequalities, where we brought in sexual orientation. You would be surprised that all 4 countries agreed that sexual orientation is a huge issue in terms of marginalization and inequality. It's not recognized. It's still under, even in the developed countries, it's still under a great deal of stigma and discrimination. Gender is a cross-cutting theme even in the SDGs. Then you have race, caste, and other religious issues which are very clearly intersecting inequalities, abilities, poverty, rural and urban, age, all those were brought in together to conceptualize this particular aspect of inequalities. We would focus on an applied social research module and research development. We would also look at social interventions. So there were not just social workers, they were also social scientists. So we said, we will not say social work interventions, but we will say social interventions. And we look at policies and practices. The core theory and aspect would be social justice. So we were looking at resources, equity, participation, diversity, and human rights. And the focus would be, how do we do interventions for inclusion of all with a perspective of non-discrimination, greater equality within and among countries. So within and among countries means among the 4 countries. How do we equalize knowledge creation? How do we equalize social work interventions and social work learning? That was the approach. So very quickly, these are the modules which are available, which we developed. And the 4 areas that we worked on, actually, 3 areas: elimination of discriminatory laws and policies and practices in all 4 countries, migration and mobility of people, as well as assistance in development. Right. So we were looking at knowledge of methods and the ability to apply them. So we were working with young scholars, and what we were doing, we were saying, you will develop particular thematic areas. You will develop the write-up on each of the areas, like gender inequalities, migration, based on the interest areas of the young scholars across the country, and you will do a podcast. So the idea was, how do we subvert the internet space and use it for promoting equality? And most of these young scholars, the selection of each of them was done based on their background. They mostly and largely belong to marginalized backgrounds. We had an Afghan girl who was a refugee in Germany who was part of that whole process. From India, the backgrounds in caste and religion were taken into consideration so that they could be part and talk about their issues. So they had a voice in making the thematic podcasts. So that was something that we focused on. We were teaching them how to, develop a research question, conduct a systematic literature review, which is a very scientific process which you use to develop articles around. So there's something called PRISMA, which all of you must be aware of, which is one of the methodologies for systematic literature review, which is up there. And ability to plan the project chronologically, your research project chronologically, and structure and present a project idea effectively. Objectives of the curriculum development is also similarities and difference among the global north and global south on social inequality and being sensitive. Pedagogy of the courses, of course, we now have content online which is developed by faculty to learn how to do research. So there is something called 10 steps to research, which was evolved out of this whole discourse, and everything was an iterative process. Over the 4 years, we met in all 4 countries, and we had constant discussions how to develop, and we would put it up on the Moodle to make it available. So we came up with these 10 steps to do research, which we've got a very good feedback from scholars saying that it really helps them to conceptualize their research idea. Our teaching assistants from each of the 4 countries developed podcasts, which were written out first, and then they narrated in a form of question-answer. Assessments were quizzes and writing assignments online. We also did a lot of offline work, so what came out of it was not quite unexpected. I'll share what came out of it. These are the professional exchanges that happened in Germany, Malaysia, and India. The last one was in South Africa. I don't have photos. This is our young scholars. As you can see, this is in TISS. They are sharing their research findings, and this is the workshop that was done in Malaysia. What came out was surprising, because in one workshop which we had, just 2 minutes, I'm finishing. In one workshop that we had was done in a place called Jagori Gramin, where we had international and national scholars coming there and doing a participatory research on waste management with the organization. And so we did that, and then we learned and developed a whole strategy to actually use waste effectively, and also make sure it's managed well, a programmatic intervention for the organization which is being implemented. And that is what forms the paper that we have written in the first one. The second one was about the students' understanding and experience of doing this transnational work. And finally, we had a book coming out of it, which has just been recently published. All the chapters are not written by us. We are only the editors. It is written by young scholars. And that is very important part of this particular book. We are very proud, and this is across countries. Yes, it's been published, and it's available online as an e-book. We still have to get the hard copies. So that are some of the outcomes, and this is what I'm ending at. We continue to work together. We have got an Erasmus Plus out of it because of the work that we did. But what was very good was, how do you use the internet, the tech tools effectively, keeping the social justice principles of social work in mind. It is not just about talking about social justice. How do we enable young scholars to actually be part of a project like this? What is the perspective with which we are working with them? The idea that we are working with them. Those are what are very important when we are doing, and have a concrete plan for exchanges. It does not mean you go there and attend some classes or take some lectures and come back. That's not how an exchange should be done. Something should come out as substantive, which can be shared with the rest of our social work community, so that they can take it forward and do something more and new. But concrete is very important for us, and thankfully all our colleagues who are there across these 4 countries agreed upon that. So that was a huge learning, and we also learned something very important. A small country like Malaysia has developed a very strong political module to make SDGs relevant from the local to the national. So their model is very beautiful, and they worked hard to make sure that all the actors come together, from the CSOs, the people, as well as the government political parties. They have worked very hard to do this, and it is coming out very strongly. So that's some new things that we learned as well for us, which was very important. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the interruptions. I wish I didn't get a PPT now.
We will take the questions a bit later, and I would request you all take down in your diaries whatever comments, questions you have for each of the speakers. We will have the discussions at the end of all the presentations. So may I request our friend Dr. Baiju, who is the Associate Professor and Director of the School of Social Work, Macquarie University, Canada. Over to Baiju. Baiju is speaking on social work education in the East and the West, technology, innovation, and learning.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Hello.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. This is good, thank you. Respected Dr. Bibin Jojo, moderator of the session, my fellow presenters, dear friends in social work. I'll be talking about some of my experience of teaching social work in Canada and India. I have 5 slides, so I hope we'll be finishing in 10 minutes. So, as I said, even though the title reads a comparison between the East and West, I may not be able to speak for the entire East and West. As I said, it is based upon my 12 years of teaching social work in India and 12 years of teaching social work in Canada. So this is purely based upon my observations. Please mind that that may carry all the biases and limitations of that. I wanted to just understand the differences between the global South, what we call a global South and North, or East and West. You know, global West is usually referring to the developed countries in Europe and America, East developing countries in mostly in Asia, and also the fundamental differences in the context of these countries, like economic development, poverty, liberal approaches and attitudes of countries, and differences in social problems. When we talk about social problems in India and developing countries, it is still mostly around poverty, whereas social problems in developed countries is not much about poverty, but other challenges in their life. So, there is also difference in the social work, education, practice between countries. One is social work is a licensed profession in the West. About 85 countries in the world, mostly in developed countries, social work is a registered profession, whereas in countries like India, it is not a registered profession. When I handed out my visiting card to a professor yesterday, they asked me, "Oh, my name is Baiju P. Vareed, MSW, PhD, RSW. What is RSW? RSW is a registered social worker. So I am a registered social worker. You need to be licensed and registered to be a social worker in most developed countries, including in Canada. Difference in the settings and areas of practice, dominated by community work in the East, in Indian context, but it is dominated by individual work, clinical work, working with individual issues in West. Education programs are accredited by accreditation agencies in the West, whereas it is not accredited in countries like India. I'm the chair of the program. Since I took the chairship the last 3 years, I had to submit the accreditation report for my diploma and degree. I just completed it 2 days before I came from Canada for my report. It's a huge work to meet the standards of the accreditation. Difference in the start of social work education. Social work education is usually started at the diploma level, immediately after high school, and BSW level in the West, whereas in Indian context, it's mostly after degree for the master level. Of course, we have BSW program. We also have social work as an elective in some of the +2 higher secondary programs. As I said, this is based upon my experience of teaching in Canada and India. I look into 2 aspects of the differences. One, curriculum, and the second, one, pedagogy. So some observations from the West and the East. As I said earlier, it does not represent the whole of West or the whole of East. So Western curriculum, it is developed based on the core competencies suggested by the accreditation bodies. So if you are starting a BSW program, the program shall have these competencies, the courses shall have it. So as for the diploma, for masters. And currency of literature and textbooks are very, very current. I'll give an example. When you study social work, one example is definition of community organization. Some of you are wrong with it. Community organization is a method whereby people identify the needs of the community, prioritize them, you have read. And that definition is by Murray G. Rose. I think still it has been taught in many of the classes. And that definition is from 1948. Murray G. Rose is a Canadian author, published in 1948. We still use that definition. So when I started teaching community work in Canada, I was thinking, oh, where is Murray G. Rose? I know he's from Canada. Let me find him out. He's nowhere in the picture. Like, it is so advanced and current. So we don't use the textbooks which is published more than 10 years. I mean, not just we, but mostly in Western context. And changing definition social work. So we still say case work, group work, not much usage of those terminologies there. It is working with individuals. Even when we talk about community work, it has grown from community development to allyship working. Critical approaches It is so important that there is a critical approaches of the existing knowledge. So interesting to see how our social work is critical about the colonization. That is important for indigenous knowledge. Indigenization is very, very significant. So for example, if there is a social work conference in Canada, the first thing will be, there will be an indigenous elder coming, doing the prayers, and such is more. We have to, all the social work programs to have one course exclusively on indigenous knowledge, and we have to have indigenous professors teaching. We have at least, out of our 14 faculty members, we have 2 faculty members who are indigenous. Focus on hands-on skills. I was teaching about my experience of teaching social work skills. How do you do assessment? How do you express empathy? And students, hey, Baiju, your lecture is wonderful. I like it. Can you demonstrate how do you do that? You have to show to them, right? Okay, come on, who wants to be my client? Let us practice it. And students have to practice it. They have to record videos, which is not much done in some other contexts. And focusing and catering to what is needed. You don't learn more than what is required. That's another thing. No specialization in higher education. There is no specialization electives mostly in a BSW level, but on the master's level. And field education is integral. As far as I know, there is only one social work program, to my limited knowledge, that is in Japan. They don't have any field practical education, but most programs have field education. When it comes to Eastern, curriculum is developed mostly by institutions, universities, board of studies. There is no agencies enforcing curriculum in Indian context. Focus on concepts is very significant. There is still need for learning the definitions, which is much different from the Western context. And there is still dependence on Western literature. All those things is still from West, and there is historical reasons for that. Field education is integral in the Indian context also. It's a generic education. We talk about social work. Social work is seen as a kind of very broader generic. We include everything in social work, whereas social work is very specific profession in the Western context. Importance of co-curricular activities like rural camps, study trips, conferences is much bigger in Indian social work education, which is not much relevant in Western context. Research is part of the most of the social project education programs in India, but it is not so much in the West. It is optional, especially when it goes to master's level. Study of topics is, there is a study of topics specific to the country, like, say legislation of the things, social legislations. And I also think, there isn't a need for social studying about the various specific legislations which could be done in the practice levels. And generic coverage of topics is also done, like legislations, family context, community context. So these are some of the observations regarding curriculum. Then we move to pedagogy. As I said, the first focus is on the hands-on skill. Like, students do interviews in the program. They practice group work. Like all those, when I have been teaching group work in India and Canada, like 10 plus 10, 20 years I have to do group work. Every class students do group work right in the class, and that is how they learn it. So mapping communities. It is very reflective. Learning is very reflective. Like, you look into yourself. Does your color affect social work relationship? So I can tell in my class, dear students, you are all privileged because of your color. I can say that and provoke them to be reflective. And how does that affect the social work relationship? Courses are taught by practitioners. We have lots of guest faculty, sessional faculty members who are working, experts in their field, and they come and teach one course. So we have one professor who is very famous child worker, and he comes and teaches that course on working with children. And forms of delivery, there are multiple forms, like fully online. We have fully online BSW program, fully online MSW programs, blog courses, like one whole course is completed in 1 week. Self-guided field practicum. The student can do a field practicum with their own guidance. They don't have to be assigned with an agency. So varieties of delivery of program. Assessment is done through assignments. In all the courses that I teach, there is no exam. It's all through the learning assignments. There is something missing. Use of learning for, the learning is intentional practice in the field. You don't learn it for the purpose of learning unless there is a need for practice it. Whereas it comes to Indian context, focus on theories and knowledge is one of the focus. Assessment is not, that term is for the typo. Assessment is done through formalized examination than reflective learnings and journals. Taught mostly by academicians. We have full-time faculties, guest faculties who are most into teaching, and the format of teaching is much different than Western context. Structured in-person delivery of the programs from day, 9 to 4 classes, 10 to 4 classes. The classes structure is much different. And externalization of learning for the student, that is one thing I felt. Like, I learn about, say, oppression, power, but I don't take into, this is outside me. Like, I don't have to be involved in it. There is no internalization of the knowledge. And importance of co-curricular activities. So you have to go for a tour, you have to attend for a camp. All the kind of stuff is significant. And focus on reporting than reflection. When I was teaching here, students submit weekly, every day report of their field practicum. It's just a report, not much reflection. Whereas they submit a monthly reflection journal. So that is a much different thing. Well, as I said, there could be some learning. And how I was thinking about, there are things to be learned mutually from both East and West. Of course, there is that binary of that unique identities of both cultures, politics, education system. But there is still, say for example, I was thinking there is more involvement of co-curricular activities in the programs in West. I wish to take my students for a camp, at least 2 days camp. That's not possible in Canada, but that is a good suggestion. And recognition of the rest of the world and incorporation of universal concerns. Unfortunately, the West doesn't think oftentimes or appreciate the knowledge outside. And it all starts from the Orientalism and the rest of discussion that is happening. And we need to, the West needs to appreciate that knowledge. As they have begun to appreciate the indigenous knowledge. In the Indian context, I would say reflective learning is very, very important. I would suggest, we don't need everyday report for the field practicum. We need 1 month, what would you learn? How does it contribute? Just kind of very specific reflective journal. And literature should be indigenous and contemporary in the East. Okay. Focus on hands-on the skills and education. And to increase integration, there is lots of things to be done, both online and offline, like offering a courses here and there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Remind you again, note down your comments, questions in your notebook. We move on to the third panelist, Dr. Anis K.R., Associate Professor, Department of Social Work, Rajgiri College of Social Sciences.
I'm really glad to talk to you this morning on a research intervention we have been doing as part of a ICSR funded project. Thank you for this opportunity to be part of this wonderful conference. We are really proud to see that we have set up a good show here because of the conferencing. So let me acknowledge the funders for this project. Actually, this project is actually on integration of social work and technology. We know that earlier when we did research, we always focused on social work research or focused only on social work, even in the silos. Now, gone are the days where we are going to do research only by yourself. Rather, you're going to integrate knowledge from various resources. Most of the solutions of social problems can be bridged by use of technology. This is one of the learning we have got from my experience of working with mentally ill people, severely mentally ill, and especially homeless mentally ill. There are contexts where we know that the number of people requiring services for mental health facilities or mental health professionals are very high compared to the available services available. So we have to find out ways through which we will bridge this gap of continuous care for people who are mentally ill, severely mentally ill. Not getting into the statistics of it, but we understand that all epidemiological studies says that at least 1% of the population in every country is affected with serious mental disorders. What will be the number of people requiring services? I'm talking only about serious mental disorders, not about the minor mental illnesses. It's huge. So there is a need for these type of interventions. So this study was meant for bridging the gap of providing this care or quality care to people who are mentally ill, who are homeless, and these are actually for rehabilitation centers. Though deinstitutionalization is an answer for good mental health care, but sometimes institutionalization helps because the care is given properly. or there is a need for care optimized so that people can be sent back to the community with the functionally effective people. So there's a gap in literature. Sorry. So the aim is to develop a AI integrated software to assess and integrate rehabilitation process. This software is meant for managing a rehabilitation center for mentally ill people which is resource constrained. Now it integrates assessment, intervention planning, and also implementation. So we know that in an ideal situation, when somebody is mentally ill, the assessment will feed to the intervention, where a proper assessment and a team meeting where all discuss the assessment material and decide what need to be done with this person and how we can integrate interventions. But then we don't have sufficient professionals, or we don't have a mechanism where multidisciplinary team is properly working. So the mechanism is limited and not available. So in that context, we thought let us have something which can bring in that intervention. So this software is known as Pragati Care. It is actually a software for integrating AI for managing a homeless or rehabilitation center facility. The major objectives of the research, you could see over there. Can generative AI be adapted for individualized care in resource-limited rehabilitation settings? Second, what is the validity of this instrument? So this particular study is about validating and making a reliable tool which can assess rehabilitation and which can implement that. Develop and tested a scalable AI in assisted planning care and to create a replicable model which can be applied to any context. So this is been approved by the Institutional Ethics Committee of Rajagiri College of Social Sciences, framed as with the ICMR guideline. So this is in that. There are actually 6 phases of the development. Since I don't have much time, I'll just show quickly the first is a situation analysis, where try to look at what is the current understanding of rehabilitation, what is expert views about it, what is literature talking about it, and also what do the people who are living in the centers talk about it. Those things are important because it's co-creation time. We need not create something for ourselves. We need to create for people with the participation. So basically, sorry, I don't know whether I can go back. So then there is a designing of the tool. Then we have integrated different tools which are globally testified for these type of uses. Then we have a pilot preparation of this thing, and we implemented 3 organizations. And after implementation, we have done 3 sites we implemented it, and 60 residents were taken for the study. And we have done expert validation of this process. Dr. Arati is already here. She is one of the experts who has vetted this whole process. So basically, this is the process we did. So in the initial part, we have a scoping review of various dimensions of literature. Then we developed quantitative data and qualitative data, and we compiled together to develop the software. It's based on evidences, based on literature, based on actual primary data from people who are mentally ill, who reside in homeless centers. So basically, needs and challenges of identifying scoping review. In-depth interviews are done with experts, chief functional centers, experts, and the quantity surveys 540 for residents of the centers. And we developed identify the key measures of the tool, and we developed that. This is the initial assessment of how we look at it. So basically, to understand that higher disability predicts poor functioning. So we need to control the disability part of it. We also need to understand better functioning lead to better quality of life. So we cannot work on the disability part because that is something which is already existing there. We cannot work on that. We need to work on the functioning part. So the software talked about how we develop the functioning part better so that their quality of life, that is ultimate outcome we wanted to achieve, how we are able to develop that. So basically, by enhancing physical, psychological, and the social functioning, how we can mitigate the negative effects of disability. That's what we are looking at it. So this is the flow of the software, how it comes. We do the organization data, what is really over there, then only the plan will come properly. Then based on the resident data and the pre-assessment, we have a integration. A will develop the other care plan. The care plan will be vetted by a human person, professional. There's an MSW or a social worker who is trained to do that. They'll be vetting that. Then we'll have the finalized care plan, implemented and post-assessment. So there is no need for a large number of professionals, only one social worker who is capable of doing that. So this is actually the software. So basically it manages data, it integrates AI, and it has standardized assessments for looking at that. So basically we have implemented, as I told you earlier, we have implemented that in 3 centers as a pilot testing, 3 centers with 20 residents each. We did the pre-assessment and post-assessment after implementation also, and we have done with the tools, validity and other things. So basically, in order to establish the reliability and validity, we did integrated reliability of 3 AI generated care plans. We did with the support of experts. Then we also did retest reliability. The same data was fed 2 times and identified whether we're getting the same assessment in plan. That is again tested. Then we also did concurrent validity by, we developed 3 pairs of AI integrated plans and we given to 5 experts, and 5 experts think they were validated. Then we also have predictive validity, where we're trying to look at the pre and post assessment of the data after a period of at least 60 days between the pre and post assessment. Actually, we should have more time, but since the project is limited in time, we have taken only 60 days. So this is the comparison of AI versus human plan. So each plan was developed, and the implementation plan was developed by a human professional and also a AI. And we compared this. So experts looked at that, whether this is matching. They looked at the quality of the material. They identified that the quality is good enough for both things. You find that the AI plan and human plan quality is good, where you could see that the mean scores of the quality is actually 3.88 and 3.82. That's almost closer for AI plan and human plan. That means the AI plan matches with what humans does. That is something which is from the expert viewpoint. Then also we did integrated reliability of plans, and we found that which is better, human plan or this thing. And we found that both plans are moderately of high quality, because the score, average score, we qualified that. Then single measures were moderate, and when we took the average measures, an excellent in terms of the quality. So that means a intervention plan is feasible, which can be implemented. So basically, they enhances the care planning. Before that, there was non-standardized, ineffective treatment strategies in low and middle income countries and places like that. Then, so AI-enhanced care can improve the patient outcomes, where we will focus on personalized treatment plan, and there is individualized care plan for each patient, and that can be implemented easily based on what is available in the center. Okay, that is the plan. A replication for it can be replicated for all low and middle income countries. So this is the theoretical contribution. We are demonstrating reliability and feasibility of an AI-assisted care planning system, which is actually beneficial for real-world context. We can apply that because we have tried in a real-life situation. And reduction of workload, task sharing. Now we are talking in terms of task sharing and task shifting, because since there is not sufficient professionals, we need to think about who else can do it. Now technology is one person who can take over some of the activities we have been doing. That is something which can. Then practical reduction of workload. Then larger trials, we need to do that. We are trying to get into a new project which is having a lot of difficulties we had in between. So we are actually doing. So current care planning is implemented by AI plan, workload reduction, improved care, and future care planning will be implemented. So these are some of the screenshots from the so we can see the progress in terms of care plans. We can see each individual progress. We can assess it on a periodical basis and see how they are changing. And this is the dashboard of the thing, what type of diseases is being included here. And we include only schizophrenia, bipolar affective disorder, and psychosis, because they are not taken on lesser intensive problems. So this is the way how many registered precedents are registered, and you can see that. And assessment report will show like that. This is the treatment goal plan. So this is the plan which you said, and I am completing my 10 minutes time. So the strength is that it is grounded in mixed methodological analysis, and it is based on evidences. And we have tested it with expert vetting, and the process is being evolved through a process where we can rely on this particular software. So it is context sensitive, and it can be used in any low and middle income countries, even in a developed country, because if there is a possibility of implementing that. So it bridges clinical, social, digital innovation, and rehabilitation. So some of the challenges, sometimes technical connectivity issues were there in some of the centers, capacity of staff. Some of the staff were not able to take it. We had to handhold them all throughout doing this process. So that requires some effort. Then there are some ethical things. We are always tried to maintain the confidentiality of data, as well as maintain the anonymity of people who have been involved. So no data is shared, personal data shared with the AI or the technology thing. Then you also sustainability. We are. So this is actually, so we need, this actually proves that AI integrated methodology is feasible and impactful, and also evidence will inform global recovery oriented care models, and digital innovation strengthens clinical, social work, and rehabilitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you to Anis. Please note down your questions, comments. May I request Dr. Arthi Jagannathan, who is just additional professor at NIMHANS Bangalore. She is going to speak to us on eco-social work, disability, and mental health, evidence-based models from NIMHANS. Over to Dr. Arti.
Greetings from the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, NIMHANS, Bangalore. I'm Dr. Arti Jagannathan, and I come from the space of psychiatric rehabilitation services as well as integrative medicine. I will be talking about two models that we have recently initiated and implemented at NIMHANS in the space of disability, eco-social work, and mental health. And in the context of today's session on digital divide, as to how that can all be weaved in. So, to start, I think the digital divide is very well known, and the reasons for that again is known to us. So the gaps between the urban and the rural, the rich and the poor, the disabled and the abled, and the women, the gender differences. Also social exclusion happens because of the digital divide, because of accessibility, because of knowledge about how to use it, as well as whether someone has the skills to implement it. And social work, I believe, helps to bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots through advocacy, through empowerment, and through the entire space of inclusion. As I have said, social exclusion in the digital divide is due to usage, skill, and access divide, and the various groups that are affected because of that. Various factors and the reasons, I don't need to go through this, as it's quite obvious in India. It's because of the infrastructural gap, because of the economic barriers, education inequalities, because of the gender norms and language barriers. In this context, we wrote up a book. We contributed a chapter. The book was published by the National Association of Social Workers, and it was specifically in the space of eco-social work. And the chapter that we wrote was, the citation is down, was in the area of disability and eco-social work and mental health. The book is available online for purchase. And the basic aspects and concepts of eco-social work and disability is something that I will be talking in this presentation today. So let's look at the concept of eco-social work and disability. Traditionally, people with disability are considered to be beneficiaries. However, the eco-social work model looks at them as equal stakeholders or partners, including them in decision making, and seeing that they are included in the entire aspect of interacting with their environment, which sees them as people contributing to the environment and not just as beneficiaries. So to expand, it recognizes the interconnectedness between humans as well as the environment. It emphasizes the need to address social and ecological challenges, and in spite of these challenges, how people with disabilities possibly do continue to work and contribute to the environmental goals. It also talks about environmental justice, which is a very important concept, sustainable development, and social work practice, and of course, it promotes social equity. Let's look at disability in the traditional societies. I mean, just to go back and forth a little bit. If you look at either the Maasai community, the Japanese community, in some communities, disability is considered as a stigma, whereas in other communities, disability is actually eulogized and looked up to, and they are included because of religious practices, especially in the Maasai community, if you see. So they are given roles in the community which are suitable for them and not excluded, for example, like storytellers or people who are spiritually ordained or someone who is gifted with special abilities, as you call the Divyangjan in India, that is people who are specially disabled. So with special abilities and not discriminated, whereas in certain communities there is a lot of stigma and exclusion. So there are anthropological as well as cultural aspects on how disability is observed in the community, which becomes extremely important when you're looking at eco-social work, because we're trying to integrate them and help them connect with the environment in the community and space that they're living at. So let's have this concept in mind while discussing about disability in the eco-social workspace. Socio-cultural influences, I just spoke about it briefly, about religion and spiritual influences, as I said, about the labels of stigma, as well as, eulogizing people through spirituality, and the influence of urbanization and education goes hand in hand in understanding the community. So in this aspect, I would like to bring in two concepts which are extremely important in disability, mental health, and eco-social work. One is the geographies of disability, is something that I'm going to be talking about, and second is meta-narratives, both these concepts. In the context of environment justice as well as disability, as I said, I will be talking about both these concepts. So let's first go to the geography of disabilities in the context of environment justice and disability. So persons with disability often get shaped based on the environment and the community that they're living in. So if the environment and the community is inclusive and it helps them lead a life where they can contribute instead of being beneficiaries, that's when we say that the geography of disability is conducive to the people with disabilities. So it looks at the place, the space, and the geographical location where people with disabilities live, how supportive it is for them to live in that space. So what is the geography of disability of this space? Do we have ramps here? Do we have spaces where people with wheelchairs can just walk, come in and sit and make themselves comfortable? So what's the geography of disabilities of this space is something that we need to understand. It includes accessibility, transportation, social inclusion, as well as influence of socio-political and economic factors. So this is one important concept that we need to look at when we're talking about environment justice and eco-social work. Intersectionality. And we talk about meta-narratives. What are meta-narratives? We already have narratives in the community which say that people with disabilities are beneficiaries. So we already have a preconceived notion, preconceived narrative within us which says that people with disabilities should be treated in ABC way, and they should be given charity, they should be given these services. So it's more like from an authoritarian position, I'm providing services to someone who possibly is a have-not. We're not looking at them as someone who can be included in society and can contribute to the society with the limitations that they have. So not looking at more the strengths perspective of contributing and not as beneficiaries of people with disabilities. So how is our meta-narrative? How is our meta-narrative of looking at people with disabilities is something that we need to contemplate and think. And what is the meta-narrative of this room? How do we look at people with disability? Do we look at them as helping them out to stand on their own feet, or empowering them so that they can stand on their own feet? So when I'm looking at eco-social work practice in India and Global South, and I'll be moving towards the topic of digital divide and the meta-narratives because of digital divide, because again, digitization is extremely bifurcated into two poles. It talks about those who can access and those who cannot access, which again does not look at inclusion. And slowly the government of India at least is coming in with apps which are more disabled friendly, which are more accessible to all people with disability. So I think we need to look at how the Global South as well as India is looking. The pictures over here basically talk to you. The initial picture that I showed you was more of the benefactor as well as people who are included, whereas here we're talking about people being included and working in society. I'll talk about two examples that we have looked at in medicine practice, how yoga can help in dealing with each of the sustainable development goals. This was the recommendations that we submitted to the Ministry of Ayush, Center for, the CCRY and Center for Research in Yoga and Naturopathy, where we've looked at each and every SDG goal and seen how yoga as a way of life can help improve or achieve each of the sustainable development goals. So concepts in yogic way of life like mitahara, swadhyaya, that is how you can live a minimalistic life, how you can adopt it as a way of life, and discussions and deliberations with the UN. We have been discussing with them as to how you can make yoga as a way of life, which also is something that we are looking at through the tele-yoga way. So we did go ahead and look at the tele-yoga guidelines and see how we can weave in the sustainable development goals in the tele-yoga guidelines. I'll go back a little. So eco-social work and tele-counseling is something which needs to be taken forward. Development of inclusive digital platforms so that everybody is included and there's no have and have not. Patient policy advocacy as well as social media awareness becomes extremely important. I'd also like to bring about a work that we have done in our department of the Tele-Psychiatric Social Work Guidelines from NIMHANS, Department of Psychiatric Social Work, which took the step to look at how tele-psychiatric social work services can be provided. Especially this was initiated post the COVID era so that ethics and standards could be framed to look at tele-psychiatric social work. In the larger context of India, we've had certain governance and digital platforms which have been inclusive. These are just some examples which are there. I won't read out the names. Some of the mental health digital innovations that are there. And in future, I would like to sum up when I'm talking about the intersection between digitization, mental health, disability, and eco-social work. It's important to look at digital inclusion in social work for people with disability, to not look at them as beneficiaries. Create community ICTs, that is information communication technology hubs, possibly in the community, so that's more accessible to people with disabilities. Research and policy advocacy to take this way forward, and to promote universal design and accessibility so that we can look at inclusive spaces where all of us live together and stay together in a harmonious society. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Aarti. Please note down your comments, questions for Dr. Aarti. We can go ahead with Dr. Patnaik. Is there? Yes. So, go ahead.
Is this working? Yeah. Yeah. I feel like a bit of an intruder here because everybody has been talking about digital inclusion and social work from the perspective of social work. I come from the other end. I come from the end of the digital technology. So I will basically go from that end. And we talk about digital inclusion. I work with UNESCO on a very interesting committee which has been set up for the governance of digital platforms across the world to deal with misinformation, disinformation, state surveillance, and so on and so forth. So my perspective will be slightly different in the sense that I question the whole idea of inclusion altogether. What does inclusion in the context of India especially mean? And we know what digital divide is in this country, but I will quickly go through some numbers just to remind ourselves. There's a Ministry of Rural Development report in which says that only 16% of India's households received 1 to 8 hours of electricity daily. 33% received 9 to 12 hours, and only 47% received more than 12 hours of a day. That's the basis for digital inclusion. While a computer would be preferable for online work or any kind of digital work, a smartphone is today the most preferred gadget. It has been seen that while 24% of Indians own a smartphone, only 11% of households possess any type of computer, which could include desktop computers, laptops, notebooks, palm tops, tablets, whatever you want. So, with these kinds of numbers, what does digital inclusion actually mean? Only 24% of Indian households have an internet facility, while 66% of India's population lives in villages. Only a little over 15% of rural households have access to internet services. For urban households, the proportion is 42%. In fact, only 8% of all households with members aged between 5 and 24 have both a computer and an internet connection. Among the digital divide is, so we can see where the digital divide and how it works. Among the poorest 20% households, only 2.7% have access to a computer and 8.9% to internet facilities. In case of the top 20% households, the proportions are 27.6% and 50.5%. The difference is apparent. Okay, so it's kind of evident to be a little bit critical of how digital governance works in India and across the world. Now, because I don't want to get into a long, winding debate on what this all means, I will talk quickly about what this digital governance that we are doing across the world and how it is working. Now, the Internet for Trust Committee, what does it ask for? It asks UNESCO's guidelines for the governance of digital platforms, calls for rights-based multi-stakeholder governance, transparency and accountability of all state and platforms, due process for users, independent oversight, and special attention to elections and information integrity. Last year we had a meeting of all the regulators from 198 countries. The two countries that were significantly missing was Indonesia and India. And if you look at the manipulation of elections, I think India and Indonesia stand right there on the top. So, India's current policy mix, where it aligns, where it clashes. Data protection and state powers. The DPDP established consent duties for data fiduciaries and penalties, but it grants broad government exemptions and creates a government-appointed data protection board, raising independence concerns vis-a-vis UNESCO's oversight ideals. The next, platform governance. IT rules, we all know what the IT rules and the 2023 amendments in India. Network governance, Telecommunications Act, we are all aware of. Elections and political speech. India relies on the Model Code of Conduct, pre-certification of political ads, and a voluntary code of ethics with platforms. These create hooks for takedowns and ad checks, but remain patchy on transparency, closed messaging, oversight, and independent appeal gaps relative to UNESCO's guidance. Now, I must tell you that in the last 2024 elections, 78,000 WhatsApp groups were created by one particular political party to target only the residents' associations around the country for micro targeting. Okay, so this was one political party. Okay. Now, how this is playing out for the common people? Welfare access and digital identity, biometric mismatches and eKYC hurdles can wrongfully exclude people from various things, rations, financial pensions, wages, and elections. Algorithmic cleanup drives have produced mass deletions and false exclusions. These harms clash with UNESCO's inclusion and remedy principles. So, what I'm saying is that when we talk about inclusion, I can go on with this connectivity, like the other one is shutdowns. And connect. India continues to feature in global tallies of shutdowns, including long blackouts. Example, Manipur. Shutdowns impede livelihoods, safety, and documentation of abuses, hard to justify under UNESCO. And the recent one was, this has been happening regularly in Kashmir, it has happened in Manipur, and it's going on happening all over, very recently in Odisha, in Baleswar, when there was. So how the digital is leveraged to influence elections and policy? Closed messaging, as I said, mobilization and micro-targeting, I just mentioned that. Open platform disinformation and weak transparency. Many investigations have documented AI manipulated content and divisive narratives. So today, what is happening on social media is frightening, because one of the internal reports that we have suggests that about 68 to 70% of all social media posts are AI generated. So we are not even sure whether we are being inclusive or not being inclusive. Okay, so what are the policy implications? There are several, and I will not go into this at the moment. But what is more frightening to me is the fact that we as a nation and as a world, we talk about inclusion, and especially digital inclusion, in all disciplines, without even understanding that what is it that we are including, who is it that we are including. It seems like we are including ourselves. We are not including those that are not included so far. We are simply playing games and saying we are being digitally inclusive, because those guys out there who have not been included so far simply do not have the means to be included. Okay, so and this has been the result. The result of this has been that governments across the world are gaining power and being more manipulative. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patnaik. Please note down your questions, comments, please. We have the last speaker, Dr. Kalpana Goel.
Hi everyone, good morning. Soon it will be good afternoon. Yes. I'm Dr. Kalpana Goyal from University of South Australia. I'm lecturer in social work. I'm here to talk about artificial intelligence and its use in the academia as well as in social work practice. I'm going to be taking Professor Chandrababu Patnaik's, okay, thank you, concerns about use of AI or use of any digital technology. Are we really inclusive or are we exclusive? Are people included, and what are the implications? The point he raised is, are there any implications? Are we just taking and embracing technology without even critically thinking about its implication for us, for our society, for the future generations? And of course, we all know that technology and digitization, enhancement, improvement, and all of these things are quite beneficial. And when we can see it also, Professor Anish has proven it here by developing some tools. Dr. Aarti has also spoken in those lines. Now, so I'm not just denying that it's not useful. It's definitely useful. However, what is that we need to be really taking into consideration? How can we use the digital technology carefully, and what is it? So let me just, I will go a little bit faster rather than taking too long. I will talk about this project that we initiated in our unit, Justice and Society at UniSA, with my colleagues, Paula, Michelle, Fatin, and another Paula. So 5 of us, we started talking about use of AI in student assignments. Nowadays, students are writing and producing assessments. We don't know whether they are writing it or is it AI writing it. Hard to catch, hard to find it. Are we really skilling them, or we are de-skilling them? Is this technology helping, or is it ruining our minds and brains? Of course, when the calculators came and technology came, everybody was happy. Now you look at the younger generation, they don't know even how to sum up 2 plus 2 or 2 plus 10. They're so scared of doing small maths because they have technology. They can use calculators. Why should they use their brain? So this generative AI, large language models, are they really skilling or de-skilling this? So let's look at that. So we wanted to understand from our perspective as educators, what shall we do? What our practitioners are doing? So we created a small project. Let's talk to our social work practitioners and ask them, are you guys aware of it is being used in practice? How are you using it? Are there policies around use of Gen AI in your practice? So we started this project. We also looked at, our Victorian government report, which came out. We said investigation into the use of ChatGPT by child protection workers. So the Department of Child Protection, they are always, short-staffed, under-resourced. People have a lot of, workload issues. Workers started using ChatGPT to write assessments, interventions, write the reports. And what they found, to save time and present work more proficiently, they started using it, but it was questioned. And while they had this report, they also found 100 more cases have indicated that those documents must have been generated by Gen AI. So now the question is, if AI can write these court reports, case notes, they can do risk assessment, they can do they can plan interventions, and they can do all of that, is there a value of human judgment if AI can do all of that? Is it accurate? Is it 100% accurate? Will there be no error? Will there be no human element where we social workers take pride in, building relationship with our client, going into it, understanding the social environment, understanding their, social milieu, and then, we are making an assessment. Can AI do all of that? That's the question. We also looked at, our Australian Association of Social Work Practice Standards. All of our, practice standards, they talk about social justice, human rights, making social workers more competent, skilled, and using technology ethically, making sure that, uh, we are not creating any harm. So practice has to be really ethical. Our Australian Association of Social Workers academic standards, they guide what we can teach and what we can't. And what does it say? It says about, the impact of generative AI on curriculum design, delivery, and student assessment. Now, it should be carefully thought about. However, we really don't have any particular guidance or guidelines, what we should do and what we shouldn't do. Yes, they do indicate that there is an impact of digital, technology. So we did some focus groups. So we had 2 focus groups, and I'm just going to talk to you about what our practitioners spoke. So in both focus groups, I remember there were 6 to 8 participants, not more than that. So in total, you can say only 15 to 16 practitioners participated, and majority of them, and we just did the thematic analysis. So what did they say? At the organizational level, we are just starting to think about use of large language models. Trials are taking place in our organizations. Our IT teams are involved, and they're talking to the corporate people, and it's only done at the administrative level. So we are not looking at use of AI in our day-to-day practice. So, and one of the participants said that I have seen some usage of AI was noticed in Department of Child Protection. The practitioners do a lot more than what I do know. I'm aware that like our child safety, like the child protection department, their system uses AI in regards to you put information and then in kind of you gives a risk matrix. So it's basically used to find out, you put some records and it gives you a risk matrix, how many clients will be at risk at what level and all that. But majority of the ground staff, the people who are at the front of providing services, they were not aware of its use. Maybe it was like a taboo. Policies around use of AI at the organizational level, majority of them said that they don't have any policies, whether they should or shouldn't. However, they have been cautioned not to use it, not to include, private information, case records, due to clients' privacy, confidentiality issues and all that. So they say that from our senior leadership, we had some guidance. No, it's not like written guidance, but some guidance. Sometimes, we get emails, and we told about, be cautious not to put client information because it's not a secure data point. Like we don't know where the information is going. And they were actually highlighted that not to use ChatGPT, Microsoft or Copilot around personal data. That was it. So not much. We also asked them, do you see any benefits of using, AI into our practice? They said, to be effective in case noting maybe, and maybe overcome workload demands. So everybody is under pressure, they have to do a lot in a short time span. So it might be useful. Of course, if something is available, people like to, enjoy and make use of it. And sometimes people are not even aware of, whether others are using it, but they do see that there is some value in it, some benefits in writing applications, in using the software to summarize what other people are saying. Nowadays, if you do a Zoom meeting or any other meeting, your meeting minutes can be generated immediately and can be disseminated. So that's the kind of a speed this technology is providing. And they say, yes, we have seen that happening. While we finished the meeting and immediately in 5 minutes, we got the meeting minutes. So it can't be done by a human, so it was done by the software. So they say, yes, we do see some of these things, but we haven't seen it much used in doing assessments or interventions or writing case notes. It has been questioned by our organization and department. Concerns, what are the concerns if you have to use? So majority of them said that if you make your assessment using AI software, who then is responsible for that assessment? Who is responsible for that decision? So if something goes wrong, can you say, well, I actually did not make the decision. AI made it for me. Or AI informed my decision. Can you say that? But the other one is around consent. Can you say, truly say, that you have consented to something that you never said? You know, the major one for me is the assessments, because we are now asking machines and software to think for us. So we are not thinking, we are not making a decision, but the machine is doing it. From the regional side, like we had some regional colleagues also participated in this survey. They said, we value a lot relationship and connection building. And majority of us, like inclusion and exclusion side of thing, they said, we don't know that everybody has that digital technology. Everybody is trained in using that technology. You may have internet access, you may have that technology, but that does not mean that you are confident in using that technology. So that's another thing. So that was the regional perspective on it. De-skilling, many of them spoke about that if we are using AI, then we are de-skilling. So de-skilling you in the long term. It could be limiting practitioners' ability to reflect on their own practice. And as social workers, we always take pride in, that we are a reflective practitioner. We are critical thinkers, and we are using that. So in case we are relying on technology, AI, then that's gone. So we are de-skilling people. There is certain, foundational skills that social workers need to have to work with people, and we are working with marginalized and disadvantaged people. So we need to be critically thinking about its use. We need to be having that why do we need, when, what, all of that need to be taken into consideration. So as a team, previously we were thinking about its ethical use. Now we have shifted our thinking, not just the ethical use, but a critical use of AI. I was doing some literature review and I looked at, what's happening around the world. The situation is quite scary, because whether it is India, China, US or UK or any other country, they're spending billions of dollars, investing in R&D, investing in creating infrastructure, training institutions, upskilling people, in making them proficient to use AI. So this is what I found in this literature, which kinds of tells me, there are systemic barriers, structural challenges. There is a global political economy that's, like neoliberalism, privatization, all those things that we have been struggling with. This is another global political economy scenario where people are spending 4.4 billion. Somebody is spending, India, look at their key initiatives, what all it includes. China, they're positioning as world leader. So they are not going to be keeping quiet if we don't use it. In fact, they would make sure that it is integrated in each and every aspect of our life, whether it ruins us or it takes care of us. So this is another paper that you guys can look into, how to be anti-AI in 21st century. It's not just about it's inevitable because everybody is doing it, because therefore we have to teach it, because this is this. We are not going to take that stance. Taming it, resisting it, dismantling it. So resistance, yes, we can and we should. That's what we think. We might change our thinking. But at the moment, with whatever we have studied, whatever we have heard from people, we think we should be resisting this. Like Luddites who resisted they resisted the use of technology in the textile industry. So they have provided us some template for social action, what we can do. So what do we want and what do we want it? When do we want it? We have to find the answers. Do we really need AI or we don't need AI? Do we need to teach our students how to use AI? Or do we need to police them? That why have you used it in your assignment? We have to have some clear answers and understanding around the use of AI. So this is some of our thoughts. It's still in progress. These are the references. Some of that we have referred that as informed.
Thank you.
I'll be happy to take your questions.
Thank you,
And I
Dr.
think we need to continue this
Kalpana.
conversation. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
may I
giving me
request-
this opportunity to present here. Thanks.
May I request the volunteers to put the chairs, and I would request all the speakers on the stage, please. And we can have some questions, brief questions to the specific speakers. Baiju, what is Baiju?
social justice, particularly in the field of marginalized people. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask. I forgot your name. Baiju. Yeah, Baiju. Yes, I should have remembered. Yeah, Baiju. That you talked about the curriculum, the difference in East and West. East meaning the South, right? So I was just wondering, how come there will be? You have talked about it's like opposites. If we are doing this, we are not doing that. How come there's been no collaboration? I mean, it's hard to believe. I mean, you're there. You're originally from, yeah. So how come there has been no collaboration or no effort to do anything about it? To learn from each other. One. Two is that you said that all are, understanding the foundation. I'm not a social worker, but others can, correct me if I'm wrong. That all our foundation, the theoretical approaches and all that is based on Western writings, right? So I don't know. It's hard to believe at this time, at this 2025, we still don't have any kind of collaboration or change or anybody who's talking about it, right?
Yeah, okay, we can take this question, your question. Yeah.
Hello, sir. Professor Baiju, sir. I have a question for you. Adding some points for the question ma'am has asked, you have done the comparison study between Canadian social work and Indian social work. Why did you choose a comparative research first of all, and are you trying to compete with each other? Is your goal is about collaboration or competition? That's my question for you.
Okay. Thank you for asking this question about AI and how at the structural and global level it is playing out. I think you have also answered your own question about that, so I appreciate it. Frankly, yes, as social workers we are working at the micro and meso level, not so much at the macro level, but the requirement here is to work at all levels. And I would say that we need to really change first of all, the macro policies, structural level, and that requires a lot of courage and lot of, social action, activism to resist change and whatever it might take. So, first of all, to do that, we need to believe, is this really that we want? Is this really going to make our lives better or worse in whatever way? If we have that firm belief, then we can go with that belief and change the whole world. Of course, it will be difficult. As I said, that when I was doing my literature review, I saw how much each country is investing into AI. And you see, what are they going to do with this? So resisting it requires a very different strategy, policies, action, and first of all, uniformity amongst us, that we need to come up and say, this is what we value. We believe in ethical practice. These are the core values: human rights, social justice, social equality, inclusion. So we think that this is going to exclude the masses, and this is why we resist. Thank you.
Dr. Aarti?
Yeah, I think my response to you would be that individual interventions are important. However, what are your meta-narratives when you work with an individual? So are you looking at your person with disability whom you're working with as a beneficiary, whom you can provide services to, who possibly does not have, has some limitations and does not have certain things, and because of which you as an authoritarian figure are doing charity to them? What is your perspective on looking at them? Or are we looking at including them and empowering them and seeing that they are equal stakeholders with us in decision making and interventions? So we first start at the individual level. First, try looking at each practitioner, each social work practitioner, and seeing whether they can change their meta-narratives. If each of us change our meta narratives, of course, when we come to discussions such as this, when we come to conferences such as this, we do discuss about meta narratives which could help influence the community and the academic community as well as the practitioner community in looking at their meta narratives, in looking at how they can. And once we move from an individual to a macro level, that's when we look at moving to policy changes to influence the government as part of advocacy. So it has to be a stepwise process. It cannot be this or that. It has to be this and that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the questions. I think I would start my response with responding to Srishti. My intention was to be collaborative and learn from each other. Responding to ma'am's question, like whatever I shared is just my observations. They are not complete. There are lots of similarities between social work education in the West and East. Say for example, social work methods are similar. So areas of practice are taught similar. Principles and philosophy are similar. Field practicum is similar. It is not very contrasting, but there are some differences. But your point about the indigenous knowledge and the dependence on Western education, that is still we have. I'll give one example. Here are lots of social work educators and students here. So when we learn the definitions, according to Baiju, according to Lakshmi, according to Manikantan, according to Narayanan, have you learned a definition according to them? We have learned definitions according to Stewart, according to McNally, according to all Western names. So that is an example to indicate how far we still depend upon a Western education system, Western authors for that. So what we need is a kind of indigenous knowledge, indigenous authors. And I was telling it is time that a NAPSI or organization start doing right shops. Let us write a code of ethics for, even the code of ethics taught in social work education is by NASW, National Association of Social Workers. We don't have a code of ethics that we teach. Of course, there are lots of things we teach. So that is one thing very much required. So I hope these kind of deliberations and discussions will help to that growth. Thank you.
Any question last? One or two questions for we can take. Okay.
So, good afternoon to all of you. My question is to Kalpana madam. As you discussed about AI in healthcare, and as you know that healthcare is commercialized nowadays, and also technology is influencing healthcare in different way. So for the mental health aspect, I am asking you whether we adopt the technology to treat the patients or to deal with the patient, mental health patients or not. And another addition to this question, at workplace also, we are seeing that the mental health is negatively affecting the people, and the rate of suicide is also more and more. So what type of initiative can we take to stop it or to prevent it? Thank you.
I think this question should be either to Aarti ji or to Anish, because okay. So for me, regarding okay. See, this is actually an area of expertise of Dr. Aarti and Dr. Anish, because both of them have done, he has done on homelessness and mental health, and Dr. Aarti has done with disability and all health. She comes from Nimans. My current study has not looked into it, so I'm not the person who can really answer this question. But I would just generally say that, if you are looking the use of technology to better health, of course it can be used. But again, we have to be very cautious how it is being used and to what extent. Are we here in a race where we are just competing or providing scalability so that we have to reach something? Then we also need to be looking into how is it going to impact at the micro or meso level, not just through the scalability thing.
Thank you for the question. Technology has both pros and cons in mental health. I'll talk about the con first. Technology addiction is a big thing right now, especially in adolescents and youth. At NIMHANS, we have a separate shut clinic that is for technology addiction and how to de-addict someone from technology addiction. There are clinical services being provided. It's been there for more than a decade now. And there are numerous publications, including research and evidence-based work that is being done to look at how interventions can be provided to adolescents and youth to de-addict themselves from technology. So that's one. You could go through a number of papers with NIMHANS tag on PubMed and Google Scholar, and you will get to know what is the work happening over there. How can digitalization help mental health? I think our flagship program of the Ministry of Health and NIMHANS Telemanas is a way forward. Telemanas is the national mental health portal where we have a 3-tier system where NIMHANS is the nodal agency, and we have SPOCs in all parts of the state where we provide telecounseling and telemental health services which are being provided at the district and the taluk level, where we have NGO partners as well as institutes at each state handled by the district mental health program. The district mental health program is at the state level, but NIMHANS is coordinating the entire district mental health program, where we have counselors and a multidisciplinary team doing tele-mental health through the Telemanas. So Telemanas is 14416 for anybody who has mental health issues. You can dial from any number 14416 and please inform your friends. It's available 24/7 in more than 30 languages for mental health counseling. And if you need any diagnosis and screening, they will connect you up to the nearest institution in your state as it is connected all over India. So I think that's the biggest digital revolution that the Ministry of Health, it was declared 3 to 4 years ago by Nirmala Sitharaman in the health budget. And they have allocated funds to NIMHANS, which we are implementing at a national level. So I think that's a big thing. I just wanted to respond to indigenous thing, just an add-on that the current NCAHP, that's the National Allied Healthcare Professionals Act, which has come in, mandates, has come out with a curriculum. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be part of it, and we have our own oath. We have our own vision and mission, and we have our own scope and definition for social work that's coming in. So we are moving the indigenous way. At NIMHANS also, in the Department of Integrative Medicine, we have been doing a lot of research with respect to indigenous literature, including our folk tales, the Indian, Islamic and Christianity texts, including the Bible, the Ramayana, and trying to cull out counseling techniques and see whether instead of a strengths-based model that I'm looking at, can I have an indigenous anecdotal reference to do? There are paper publications available on that from NIMHANS, and I think we would like to move ahead in that way. Thank you.
Though the question was not directed towards me, I think when I look at AI or digital aspects, 3 dimensions in that. One is that what is the impact of this AI and digital aspects on the mental health of people, that is addiction and all those stuff. Second is how do we use the same thing for benefit of mental health promotion, or how do we use the technological advances for benefit of that. And third is how do we social workers use for practice enhancement, how do we use technology and AI for practice enhancement. I have looked at the third part, that is how we can integrate technology into our day-to-day practices, so that the quality of care can be improved, quality of mental health services can be improved, and how we integrate that into our own social work practice. So my model is on how we use AI to fill the gap of intervention. For example, we have, ma'am was not there when I spoke. It was about rehabilitation of mentally ill people and how do we use AI and digital technology for making efficient mental health care. So that is something which is beneficial. Now we have to weigh between these 3. The first thing is the one thing which we have been discussing all the time, for the last 10-15 years we have been discussing, and post-COVID it has been becoming very, very important aspect. Behavior addiction is becoming very common. Those things. But along with that, how do we productively use it? Now this is called responsible digitalization. So how do we make people responsible digital users? And how do we make policies and programs? For example, we have an AI policy in our college for assignments and academic work students does. Because we have to regulate, sometimes we have to regulate, but we cannot say that, okay, we will not use it.
When Google came, people said, no, you have to go back to textbooks and search it. But can we imagine that we go back to textbooks and search it? That's not going to happen. So we have to live in the world of AI and technology. And how do we effectively utilize it? How do we translate that into better outcomes? That is something which we have to look at in these type of forums, and how do we look at the bridge between, or the boundaries, how do we set the boundaries, which is very, very difficult. Thank you. A policy for academics. It's academics. So there's an AA policy for assignments, AA policy for dissertation. That is there. It's spelled out very clearly. What is expected, what is not expected.
Usually there's a percentage where, like, you have the plagiarism check, you have the AI check now, at least in NAMANS they are seeing, and there should be not more than 20% AI similarity that is there. So there's a software for that to check how much plagiarism is there, how much of AI is there. If you cross 20%, then they'll have to rewrite the check. Similarly for the
There are software. There are software at the institute level, library level. We can have, but plagiarism based software is Turnitin is much better. Last question. We'll have the last question or comments.
Hi, I have a question just for Dr. Chandra Patanayak. So I really liked your point about people who are excluded do not even have the means to be included. And I think this is really important in terms of the relationship between welfare access and digital exclusion. We saw this directly when we went to the tribal villages in Koraput, where people need a bank account to access a job card, to then build a road, to then access the nearby communities, and to safely leave their village. And we definitely see this in Australia, particularly with people from different cultural backgrounds and who are non-English speaking who move to Australia and need to access welfare services like Centrelink. So I was just wondering if you could talk about how you think that we can begin to include the people and those who are being excluded. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things was just mentioned here is that, you know, we should not start using AI as a power tool. Once you stop using AI as a power tool, then it will automatically get into the public domain. Right now we think that it belongs to us, and so therefore it becomes another level of power in society. That's one thing. The second thing, I think, which is more important, and I think a question that we kind of hesitate to ask, is do we actually have a choice when it comes to AI? We don't have a choice. We think we have a choice. Can we resist it? I'm not too sure. Yes, it's not something that, and it is going to be more pervasive than we believe it is. It's going to be way more pervasive because it is not going to be hardware connected all the time. It will be neural connected very soon. And once that happens, everybody will become part of the AI revolution. That's one thing. The second thing that I just wanted to quickly say is that why are we so worried about AI? We, as human beings, essentially are aggregators of knowledge. We all our knowledge is aggregated knowledge. We have learned from books and from other people and everything else. AI is simply a better human being. It's a faster and better human being. It has aggregated way more knowledge than all of us put together can. Okay? Now, how AI is going to use that knowledge is something that we should be a little concerned about, not how we are going to use AI, because we don't have that choice anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted to add some things which is very important. As AI is inevitable, okay, we agree or not agree, disagree. I still disagree. I think it's for us because AI is also human-led. It has been created by human beings. So let's not lose sight of the fact. I'm reminding that. By more important and significant, when we use the words like indigenous, what are we talking about? Whose knowledge is being indigenized? I think that critical thinking needs to be brought in the forefront. You know, the moment we bring in a particular kind of indigenous knowledge, we are continuing the hegemony which existed earlier in terms of knowledge and language and understanding. And therefore, if we are looking at people's knowledge which has been marginalized and how do we talk of that as indigenous knowledge, that needs to come in. When my young friend out here shared that reality, why are people, tribal populations being excluded from digitization? Because digitization is not their knowledge system. What is this big knowledge system that is being brought to us from top? That needs to be constantly interrogated and questioned. We cannot stay away from questioning and interrogation. We cannot give up without a fight. And therefore, it's important to walk with the marginalized populations and bring in their knowledge. And we have lots of examples. In fact, the technology space, the social media space has been taken over by a lot of tribal people and young indigenous people to bring in lovely social media posts on what is this knowledge system. So it can be subverted, it can be used differently to bring in that voice. And indigenization is not just about religious texts, indigenization is about the ancient knowledge of our tribal Adivasi populations. That is indigenous. That's how we talk about Australian Aboriginal knowledge. That's how we talk about, that is indigenous. We have somewhere co-opted these words into very, very neoliberal ideas and religio-cultural ideas which are continuing to be hegemonic. And I'm sorry, I'm speaking very bluntly, and I know where I'm coming from. I do not agree with the usage of these words in such a manner. I think it's important to understand a Dalit woman who's been raped and assaulted 5 times, her mental health comes from the structure of oppression. It does not come from a space of DSM-4 or 5 or whatever it is, little bit knowledge that I have of mental health. So we need to also relook at what is this mental health that we are talking of when it comes to excluded populations.
Okay, thank you. I thank all the panelists, beautiful audience, and end of the day, what we see and what we get from this discussion is there is divide either in terms of technology, whether in terms of social structure, whether in terms of knowledge. There is a larger political economy, and so everywhere there is somebody dominant, somebody is hegemonized. And also there is a larger divide, and also we are talking that as social work educator or professional, we are thinking of that how we can minimize as much as possible that divide between the people who are other side or this side of the this digital divide or the social exclusion we are referring here. And in the same way, what Dr. Baiju was referring with regard to literature, we are unfortunately so obsessed with Western literature. And so we have not been able to go beyond that. We have literature locally or nationally or within the country, but I think we have to go beyond. We have to have much more. And also, I must tell Dr. Baiju that this discussion is going on. In this conference itself, we have group discussions on coming up with definition of social work, which has been going on for several NAFSWI conferences. It is not today, but today also there is a group discussion on working on the definition. We are also working in another group is working on the ethics. So these discussions are going on, and not only this conference, the discussions are going on over the years in different conferences, and we are still to evolve the final definition and the ethics. But this is the need which we wanted to share. I think I'll stop here. Wonderful audience, good questions, and wonderful panelists I had here. And with that, I thank everyone. And I think let's break for a cup of tea. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir and ma'am. Now, we have come to a very special part of the session, the felicitation. Now, I would like to invite Professor Vipin Chojo to kindly felicitate Professor Baiju P. Warid. Now, I would like to invite Professor Bipin Jojo to kindly felicitate Professor Chandrabhanu Patnaik. I would like to invite Professor Bipin Jojo to kindly felicitate Dr. Kalpana Goel. I'd like to invite Professor Bipin Jojo to kindly felicitate Dr. Aarti Jagannathan. I would like to invite Professor Bipin Jojo to kindly felicitate Dr. Shevli Kumar. I would like to invite Professor Bipin Jojo to kindly felicitate Dr. Anish KR. Now, I would like to invite Professor Baiju P. Warid to kindly felicitate Professor Bipin Jojo. Thank you so much to all our esteemed speakers for sharing such rich insights, perspectives, reflections today. Your contributions have added immense value to this session of the 13th Indian Social Work Conference. We thank all participants, faculty members, research scholars, and delegates for being attentive and engaging with the theme. This marks the conclusion of this session.